We're going to be in 1 Samuel 14 today. Well, we're gonna work our way to David and Goliath. We're not going to hit David and Goliath, but we're going to work our way in that direction. And kind of set up. I don't know when the last time that you did more of a context of what's going on with when we hit David and Goliath and what's going on there, what Saul's condition is, etc. And so that's what we'll do today, and we'll see how far we get. 1 Samuel 14, we're not going to look at the whole chapter, but a part of the story is just really interesting. 1 Samuel 14:1. One day Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he did not tell his father, obviously, Saul. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron. So completely aside, having nothing to do with the lesson, how many of y'all growing up thought that was, I've always heard it said pomegranate, like there's an L there. Anybody else? It's always been pomegranate. Okay. All righty, well there's that. I've always heard an L there, and then when I actually saw the word, because I don't use that word very often, and hey, look at that pomegranate. With him were about 600 men, among whom was Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. He was the son of Ichabod's brother, son of that guy, Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. No one was aware that Jonathan had left. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. So verse 6, Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." And his armor-bearer said, "Do what you want to do. Do what you're thinking. I will be with you wherever you go." Obviously, it's not exactly what is said, but that's what I get out of it. Close enough. And so verse 8, Jonathan said, "Come then, we will cross over toward them and let them see us. If they see us, wait there until we come to you, and we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes that they were hiding in." The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us, and we'll teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." So Jonathan climbed up using his hands and feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan and his armor-bearer, and they killed about 20 men. All right, verse 15. Is that just not like the strangest story ever? It's just one of those stories that's kind of tucked in here as you're reading through it, and you get to the end of it, and you just go into verse 15. So they literally say, we're gonna go up to the Philistine outpost. And Jonathan is a part of what nation? A nation, Israel and Philistines are like neighboring nations, right? They're okay with each other. They're cool together, right? No, they're not friendly neighbors. And Jonathan just kind of says, hey, to his armor bearer, "Hey, let's go to their outpost. Let's kill some Philistines." And notice what he says. How will he know that the Lord is with them? Yeah. If they say, "Hey, let's do this. Come on, we'll take you out," then God is with us. The Lord is with us. Anybody else find anything interesting or unique about this? This is one of those areas where I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, that I don't know if it's just in our fellowship, but there's this idea of, application and what do I do with this? And this is one of those times where it's like, it's a story. It's here. It's a part of the narrative. And when he said, we'll teach him a lesson, Jonathan was like, let's go. It's on. Let's do this. And Jonathan and his armor bearer killed 20 men, or some 20 men, in the area of about a half of an acre. Yeah. Right. To have something to fight with. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, and I also find it interesting that a part of the narration notes that nobody knew where Jonathan was. Because Jonathan not only didn't tell his dad, Saul, but he also didn't tell who? Anybody, other than his armor bearer. His armor bearer knew where he was because his armor bearer was with him. But nobody else knew. So the king's son, who is obviously, and we find out in later stories, a good military man, and obviously a very aggressive military man, goes out on his own and says, in fact, before this story, what do we know about Jonathan? Or I should say, what do you know about Jonathan? He's David's friend, like really close friend, like best friends. He's Saul's son, right? Next in line for the throne. Do we have a four? Anybody? So I find that interesting that we have Saul, a very famous king of Israel, the first king of Israel of three. And here's his son Jonathan, and we know those things about him. Very close to David. This story possibly gives us a fourth thing, where he is not just courageous, but as he goes with his armor bearer, how does his armor bearer seem to relate to him? What is their relationship? He's a servant. Is there a lot of trust there? Look, man, wherever you go, I'm in. Okay, we're going to crawl up this hole, and we're going to come out to all these Philistines, and they're going to want to fight us. Are you in? The armor bearer says, do your thing, man. I'm right behind you, wherever you go. True. Now, it does say his armor bearer followed and killed behind him. The first attack of Jonathan and his armor bearer killed. So it seems to be that the last verse that he was there fighting as well. Okay, for any other thoughts? As I was reading this, how interesting. Yeah. Then panic struck the whole army, those in the camp and the field, those in the outposts and the raiding parties, and the ground shook, and it was panic sent by God. Or yeah, 20 guys go down by 2 guys, or 20 plus. And the whole Philistine camp, not just part of it, the whole army, the whole Philistine camp really freaked out. And as I've shared with you in the past, which, again, this may be one of those things that doesn't interest many people, but that word there is Elohim. A panic was sent by Elohim, or at least Eloha, the singular. So Saul's lookouts at Gibeah and Benjamin saw the army melting away in all directions. Then Saul sent the men who were with him, muster the forces and see who has left us. And when they did, it was Jonathan and his armor bearer who were not there. I still find it so interesting that Jonathan told no one. But it also doesn't seem to indicate why he told no one. He and his armor bearer just leave. Yeah. If they tell, it's like what is that phrase? It's better to get, there's a term. Yes, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So Saul said to Ahijah, bring the ark of God. At that time it was with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priest, the tumult in the Philistine camp increased more and more. And so Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. So then Saul and all his men assembled and went to the battle. They found the Philistines in total confusion, striking each other with swords. Those Hebrews who had previously been with the Philistines and had gone up with them to their camp went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all of the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So on that day, the Lord, and that word is, I believe it's Adonai, or Yahweh, saved Israel. And the battle moved on beyond Beth Haven. And then you've got this really, really odd story there that actually take up quite a bit of the chapter. So we're gonna go on to chapter 15. Samuel says to Saul, I am the one that the Lord sent to anoint you king over the people of Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Adonai, the Lord of hosts, the Lord Almighty, says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death the men and women, children and infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them at Talem, 200,000 foot soldiers, 10,000 from Judah. Have you ever seen 200,000 people at one time together? I've mentioned this before, and it only interests me just because once I kind of actually processed it for and our visitors in the back. Hello, good to see y'all. I'm a huge college football fan, and at the University of Michigan and the University of Tennessee can hold about 110,000 people, and that's just in the stands. So this is 200,000 foot soldiers. So if you take the amount of people, if those stadiums are packed, plus another 50,000 people, and I've never been there, but when you watch it on TV, it's a lot of people. And you add another 50,000, that's how many military men, soldiers, that Saul had at his disposal, plus 10,000 from Judah. And so Saul went to the city of Amalek and set up an ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Kenites, go away, leave the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. The Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he destroyed, totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and the cattle, fat calves and the lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised, weak, they totally destroyed. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was angry, He cried out to the Lord all that night. Early the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, "The Lord bless you. I have cried out to the Lord. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." But Samuel said, "What then is the bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul answered, the soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and the cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we totally destroyed the rest. And I don't know what your translation says, and even I'm finding there's two different NIV translations, late 70s and mid 80s. What does y'all say? The beginning of verse 16. Stop? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mine says enough. Anybody else? Be quiet. Be quiet. Or we're not supposed to say, shut up. That's what I oftentimes tell my dog when she barks a lot. But she's very annoying. So enough. Stop. Be quiet. Samuel said to Saul, "Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Although you were once small in your own eyes," verse 17, "did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you over king of Israel, and he sent you on a mission, saying, 'Go and completely destroy these wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you've wiped them all out.' Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? But I did obey. I went on the mission you assigned to me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites, brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal." Samuel replied, and this is kind of where the beef, the meat, the substance of this is. "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obedience? To obey is better than to sacrifice, and to heed, to listen, to follow is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Then Saul said to Samuel, "I have sinned. I have violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord there." Etc., etc. Curious up to this point, thoughts you guys have as we read through this, and you probably haven't heard this story in a couple of years, maybe longer than that. What are some of your thoughts?
I'm not sure why they brought the king back.
Right?
It seemed clear they were supposed to kill him.
Yeah. Not sure what good he would be.
Well, it was a trophy.
True. Yeah. He's a king.
It's a point of pride, really.
Yeah. Even though you may put him in jail or whatever they would consider that.
But the statement that Samuel makes, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings, as in obeying the voice? Behold, to obey is better than to sacrifice. And I think that's interesting because honestly, if you are obeying perfectly, there's no need for sacrifice.
Yeah. The whole point of the sacrifice
The whole point of the
is
sacrifice
you
is
didn't.
because you did, disobey.
Yeah.
But in this case, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I found it almost like I don't know, hyperbole, maybe overstatement, that these two things are compared. For rebellion is just like the sin of divination, witchcraft, which is very much not done. And for those of you that might be interested, maybe none of you are, but it's a crazy story. Well, let me see if I can find it again. Okay, so wow, we're like 10 chapters from here. I thought it was in 2 Samuel. 1 Samuel 28. 1 Samuel 28, if you're interested. Saul actually goes to the witch of Endor to do witchcraft and raise Samuel from the dead. And that actually happens. And if you have even a second level interest, which is really cool, go to the Hebrew. And if you have like some tools that help you do that, and if you're interested, I'll show you a couple of tools. You can look at the actual Hebrew. The terms that are used there for when they see Samuel raised and what they actually call him and where he's coming from. Yeah. Before or after?
The fact that he went to a witch to raise someone from the dead.
Well, it actually doesn't say. It actually doesn't say. That's a good question. That may be a good afternoon discussion. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, 1 Samuel 28, it is the whole story is very, very interesting. So rebellion is equal to witchcraft. And then what does it say? Arrogance is like idol worship. It's like idolatry. So if you are full of yourself, you are setting yourself up as a god. And if you're going to be rebellious, you may as well do witchcraft, which was very much.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because that's what Satan and his angels did. I mean, they rebelled against the Lord. That's kind of how they got kicked out. So it makes perfect sense. I mean, that kind of the father of witchcraft, if you will, and also idol worship and arrogance. He was proud. So that's the apex sin right there. That's kind of what he's saying.
Yeah. And so consider this, and it's related directly to this story, that for Saul, and if you walk through what Saul does here, and there's kind of two parts to this, which I don't think we're actually going to get to what I want to get to, because this is so cool. What Saul does, and he actually says, it explains a lot more in verse 24. I have sinned. And also, by the way, that the word sin, I'm not sure about the Hebrew and the Greek, is like an archery term, and it not simply, but it means to miss the mark. So if you're shooting for a target and you hit a tree instead of hitting the target, that's the idea of sin, to miss the mark. So what mark was Saul given here to hit by the Lord? Which was what? Kill everybody. And yet Saul chose to not only keep the king, but the soldiers took the sheep and the cattle. And what was their excuse for keeping it? To keep it to use it as sacrifices, the best of what was devoted to God. And then Saul says, verse 24, I have sinned, so I've missed the mark. I did not obey. I did not follow what God called me to do. So I violated the Lord's commands and your instructions. And then I was afraid of what? The men. So apparently there was this faction of men that came and said, hey man, we got some good stuff here. These are some good sheep, good cattle, and we can get it and offer it to God.
Animals to the Lord, they keep the animal.
Right.
They kill the animal ritually and drain its blood and all that, but then they take the animal home for dinner.
Right. So there was also a number of levels to what their intentions were. So as opposed to following God and doing what the Lord told him to do, he followed these men. I gave in to them. So I beg you, forgive me my sin and come back with me so we can worship the Lord. So chapter 16 is this story about, oh yeah, go ahead.
Go there.
Yeah.
And then Saul says, no, I've sinned. Lord, forgive me. And he gets told, nah.
Yeah.
Now, David did at least as bad things and was forgiven over and over and over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it seems
No, that's a very interesting point, because I have often been very curious by Psalm 51. What are a couple things that we find, if you remember Psalm 51, that are stated there in terms of what David presents to God? What does he state there? And in some ways, it's the same situation, because David doesn't come to God on his own and say, man, I feel terrible, I can't believe what I did, and it's been a couple of months, and I'm just here to lay it before you. Is that what happened? Right. So much in the same way, David did not go to God on his own. How did that work out? So Nathan goes to David, right? And Nathan tells him the story, the guy that has the one sheep, and the guy takes it. And you remember David's response? Get him. Go bring him to me now. He's dead. I'm going to kill him. And Nathan, of course, says, that's you. And so then we find, and we obviously don't know between that story and in Psalm 51, the distance. But David does go to God and say, hey, man, I messed up. I sinned. It's right there in front of me. And everything I did was wrong. All of it was wrong. And I'm asking you to bring me back. So, yeah.
Well, and I think this is an important distinction between David and Saul, because David is referred to as a man after God's own heart. Mm-hmm. When it came down to it, David obeyed God. What David did in the sin with Bathsheba was sin against man. Right.
Yeah.
And so, in Saul's case, he's sinning against the commandment of the Lord.
Right.
The Lord said, "Go wipe out the Amalekites."
Yeah.
He did. And so I don't know if there's a distinction there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
David otherwise obeyed the commandment of the Lord.
Yeah. And in fact, even when David had a couple of opportunities to kill Saul, he said, hey, not my place. I'm not going to do that, because he's the Lord's anointed. He is still the Lord's anointed, even though David was technically the Lord's anointed as well. And I keep sharing this because I just find it so interesting that between the time that David was anointed as king and actually became king was 2+ decades. So let's say that David becomes king, or is anointed today, be king. He doesn't become king. What is that number? Till 2050. Now let that resonate in your brain, because a lot of times we say, 25 years. 2050, from today, is when David actually became king. There's a lot of time and a lot of history between his anointing and when he actually becomes king. So Saul remains king even after this. No, true. Yeah, good point. True. So kind of put that in retrospect here, that even though Saul has been rejected as king, Saul does this. Saul remains king for another 25 years. Now, that's if what I've looked at in all the years are accurate. I'm not very good with math, so I've had to find other people to help me out with that. So to Bob's point, Saul does repentance, if you will. I beg you, forgive me of my sin. And Samuel said to him, nope, not going to go back with you. You've rejected the word of the Lord. Now, I'm not saying that's how Samuel said it. That's my own intonation of my voice. The Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. And so Samuel turns to leave. And so now, let's see, what do we have? 10 minutes. So in chapter 16, you have the anointing of David as king, and you have this just really interesting story of all the different sons that come, and none of those are the right one. Do you have any other sons? He says, oh, yeah, that one. He's attending sheep. And go get him. Came back. And the youngest son of Jesse, the youngest, the smallest, is the one that will be anointed as king. Another interesting thing of all this, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, is the idea that Saul, David, and Solomon were messiahs. In the sense that the term Messiah means anointed one. And the word anointed actually means to smear with oil. So each one of these guys were smeared. They were anointed. They had oil dripping from them. They were messiahs. But obviously the ultimate Messiah comes in Jesus, in Christ. But I've never thought about these men as messiahs, as the word is technically, because Messiah, as well as Christ, Messiah is Hebrew and Christ is Greek, and they mean smeared one or anointed. Okay, so when we get into chapter 17, at this time, Saul, has been rejected as king. He's got that whole situation over his head about what he did. And again, to Bob's point, Saul is like, man, I messed up. I'm sorry. Pray to God that he will forgive me. What does Samuel do? Not only pray to God, forgive me, but go worship with me. And Samuel says, nope, see ya, I'm out of here. And that whole scene ensues. So now the Philistines gathered their forces, chapter 17, for war and assembled at Soka in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes, all those words. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah, drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. Have you ever wondered, what is the deal with the Philistines? Why the Philistines? And I may need to do some more research on why not another nation? And the answer I sometimes get back from people is, well, that was just their enemy. I know that. Why? Why the Philistines? Now, you go to some small towns in different places. And when I say small, anything like under, 30,000, and you may have two different high schools, or a town here and a town here, and they have high schools and they hate each other. And they all hate each other because they're the other town. And they're the rival, and that's simple as that. And maybe that was the case with the Philistines. So the Philistines occupied one hill, the Israelites another, the valley between them. And so a champion named Goliath comes along, and he came and it describes his outfit, his armor, all of these things. Apparently a pretty big guy. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Interesting. Never noticed that before. So Goliath stood out and shouted at the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. If I overcome him and kill him, you will be our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistines said, now, what happened, whether it was a month, 6 months, a year before this, with Jonathan and his armor bearer? And you would assume that got out. So Jonathan and his armor bearer take out 20 plus Philistine men in this surprise attack. Two guys take out 20 plus men. And now they are meeting together in this battle. And then you have this Goliath figure coming out. And essentially, if I win, You guys serve us. If we win, you know how that goes. If he is able to kill me, we're your subjects. If I kill him, you're our subjects. This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the of Israel were dismayed and terrified. I don't know if that's ever interested you or fascinated you, but with all of the things that have happened up to this point with Israel and the nations and all the stuff that God has done for them, and yet this Goliath comes out, and his height has kind of differed between 8-9 feet up to 12-13 feet. Pretty big soldier. He's got that sword, all the stuff that he's got on. Must be a pretty big guy if he's able to do all that. And yet, how does Israel respond to this? They're freaking out. They are scared to death, dismayed and terrified. Which, if you want to connect some interesting dots to this, when the disciples of Jesus are on the water and there's this big storm, do you remember what it says about their response? They're terrified. We have other situations in the Bible where things are happening and we find people being terrified. And what is the response from Jesus when he meets them on the water? Do not be afraid. And something I've always found very interesting that I even have a hard time in my life of doing is, Jesus reaches. Do you remember what happened? I'm going to do a little aside here. What happened before the walking on the water that the disciples were a part of? Feeding of the 5,000. So Jesus took a plate of food and ended up turning it into enough food for, if we do the numbers right, 10,000, 12,000 people. So then he's on the water, and I think not long before that he had done an exorcism. He had taken out a demon of a person. And so Jesus gets to them on this water, and it's a terrible storm. And his thinking to them as a human is not so much, where's your faith? But it's more of what? What are you worried about? I just, fed 12,000 people. I just exercised. What is your deal? Is your memory that short? Do you not think? I'm literally, I'm walking on. So when you look at those kind of situations, and Jesus asked them, where is your faith? Where did your faith go? In this kind of a situation, it's almost as if God is saying to these people, really? You don't think I can handle this? And so for 40 days, we find this happening. And if you have any interest in this, this is one of those 40. I think there's about 12 of them, maybe, of the number 40 in the 40 days of something happening, either 40 days or 40 years. So for 40 days, the Philistine came forward, said what he said. And then we find, of course, David, who was the anointed one, but he isn't going to be king for another 25 years. He shows up. And so what we've been trying to work toward in the last couple of weeks, getting to this place, is where Israel is, where Saul is. Saul has been appointed king. For what reason? Why is he there? Because Israel wanted a king to be like the other nations. And so Saul then, and do you remember how Saul was described? Tall, handsome, good-looking guy, military guy. So they wanted the appearance that looks like all the other nations. So that's why he's there. Has nothing to do with his integrity, has nothing to do with anything about him. It's because of what they wanted. And so now they're in this position where you need a man of faith, not even necessarily great faith, just a man of faith. It's somewhat like that little boy that went up to Jesus and said, hey, here's a plate of food. This child, I don't know what you can do with this, but here's my offering. Sometimes God just needs a little bit of faith. And when you look at Israel here, they didn't have any. Completely freaking out. And of course, as we know the story, David goes up, and I also don't know if you've noticed this before, but David has like 3 different filters, if you will, before he even gets to Goliath. Because he has a talk with his oldest brother, and you remember what his oldest brother said to him? Go home. You're a punk. Why aren't you with the sheep? What is wrong with you? I don't know anybody as selfish as you. It's essentially what he tells him. And then he gets to Saul, and Saul wants to put his armor on him, and it's too big. So he's got these filters he has to go through before he even gets to Goliath. And then when he finally does get to Goliath, he states this thing that is just really, really powerful. What you said, what you're thinking right now about me is going to get flipped. I'm going to take you out. The birds are going to eat your body, and you guys are going to serve us. That's how this is going to go down. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, verse 45. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. So it seemed very simplistic, but notice here, Saul, his approach with the Amalekites was not only what he wanted to do, but also what the men talked him into doing. David comes to this Philistine, to Goliath, and none of this is about David. I've got Yahweh on my side. I come against you by his name, by his authority, by his might and his power. Lord Almighty, the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands. Not, man, you do not know how good I am with this slingshot. Man, I take something out at 200 yards. I am so good, you're done for. It doesn't say that. Man, I'm small and I'm agile and I can, it doesn't say any of that. The Lord is going to deliver you into my hands. I'm just here as a conduit, as a vehicle to make that happen. Yep. How many of you guys have ever wondered why he had more than one stone? It's kind of that, what did Jesus write in John 8 kind of thing? And this isn't the answer. But when you look at the number 5 in Hebrew, they were very big on numbers. They were very symbolic for them. It's an interesting number. It's not just a random thing. But the number 4 for 40 and 5 are very interesting things. Because obviously he didn't need more than one. He didn't need to pick up all those, but he did, and it's recorded that he did. So David runs out there and takes out the Philistine. So 2 quick things to close, and it's kind of along the lines of what Doug mentioned, that the people chose Saul. Not specifically him, but they chose him as king. They didn't want the Lord anymore. We're rejecting you and your whole way. We want this guy. But who chose David? The Lord. Now, he's still going to be a king. God is no longer king over Israel anymore. He's still going to be king. But now that we're there, and I find that really interesting. God doesn't pivot. He doesn't say, look, this was an experiment. It messed up. It's terrible. I'm going to go back to being your king. He keeps that line, and obviously we have Solomon after this. So he keeps that going, but he's going to install his guy, his man, into this position. And is David also going to be full of fault? Is he going to make some interesting decisions?
Yeah.
He is. Very, very interesting. And yet it seems like along the way, David's like, okay, man, I have strayed. I gotta get back. I encourage you, if you ever have the interest, to read some of the, I guess you'd call them angry psalms. And they're not all by David, where the psalmist essentially says, look, this is stupid. I don't like your plan. I don't like what you're doing, and you need to fix it. Okay, now that I got that out, I'm better. God, you do your thing. But God allows for that emotion. God allows for that, that emotion of, God, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like how you're doing it. This is all dumb. But I'm human, you're God, you do your thing. That's not exactly how it's stated, but that's kind of what's going on. All right, yeah.
Gives us hope that God uses.
Yes.
Or, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Sinful people to do His
Yes.
will. So through God, we can do great things, but it's not because of us. It's because God cleanses us and uses us.
Yeah. And that's a great way to close, because we, oftentimes we as humans get kind of caught up in our sin and our fault and our challenges. But what is the only thing that God asks us to do is, what we would call New Testament repent, to pivot, to return back. Go back to where we were whenever we were in that good place of obedience. God doesn't get so worked up about the rebellion if we're willing to come back. It's very possible and evident, as Kent mentioned, God knows the heart, that Saul was upset because he got caught, not because of what he did. David was upset because of what he did, not that he got caught. Very, very interesting difference. All righty. Yeah.
Excuses, even when he said he had sinned.
Yeah.
That's right.
And David was just, no, I
Straight
didn't.
up. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank y'all for your comments.